Fortunately, but if you go to Facebook or YouTube or anywhere, you can see it and you can see
Oh,
live.
okay.
Just mute it. All right, Jarek, you're up to bat.
Hey everyone, my name is Jarek Robbins. Welcome to another Conversation with Success. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Simon. He is a personal development entrepreneur, a coach, public speaker. His clients are from all walks of life, but they share one trait. They all believe the greatest investment you can make is you. His work has been seen on Sky News, BBC, Barclays featured him as a nationwide campaign asking him the questions of how families could embrace better lifestyle habits.
Mm.
His insights have been seen and featured on Huffington Post, Forbes, Virgin, The Guardian, Success.com. And he's regularly speaks at organizations including Salesforce, Microsoft, Ernst& Young, Adobe, Unilever. His debut book, Energize, was published by Penguin in April 2022 and became an instant bestseller, and has also received endorsements from the likes of the New York Times, best-selling author Simon Sinek, Marie Forleo, and Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. Simon, we are thrilled that you are here.
Jarek, thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, of course. Now we want to dive in because we're talking about some of the principles from your book here, and I want to start with just maybe let's set a foundation for everyone. I know the best investment you can make is yourself, and as you invest in yourself, where do you believe people should start?
For me, it begins with our physical energy. If there is anything that the last couple of years has taught us, Jarek, is that our health is our first wealth. The global pandemic reminded us of that. And it taught us that we have to stop making our health a side hustle. And I think unless we address our physical energy, now, when I talk about physical energy, I'm referring to sleep and rest, your diet, moving your body. Unless you've got a solid foundation in place, it is very difficult to show up in the way you want in all the other areas of your life.
Yeah,
That's a
that's true.
it's really true, and we hear that a lot. Like, you know, the health is your wealth. I've heard that a lot. Go through our industry on a high level in leadership. Where do we start though? Because you mentioned, at least in the introduction here, Jarek said part of this is also familial energy. Like, what does
Mm.
that look like on a more personal level outside of work? Is that where energy starts with the self and the family, or how does that coexist?
Sure. So when I think about energy, it's really four dimensions. The reason I started off with physical energy is because that tends to be the default. When many of us start the new year, resolutions tend to focus on physical energy. I want to be fitter. I want to get healthier. I want to sleep better. I want to eat better. But actually, we neglect the other areas being mental energy, emotional energy, and spiritual energy. And so, if we take a moment to observe society around us, what we tend to notice is that many are exhausted, not because they are physically doing too much, but because very often they are running someone else's race and doing too little of the things that bring them joy. And that's where spiritual energy comes into play. When you're low on spiritual energy, as an example, you're going against your natural strengths, talents, and skills. But when you're high on spiritual energy, the work that you do is an extension of your talents and your gifts. And that's when you experience flow. And the way that family comes into that is with the spiritual and the emotional. Because what it does is it gives you a sense of purpose, it gives you greater meaning for the work that you're doing.
I like that, man. It's so simple. I think I overcomplicate everything. That's one of the things. It's energy, right?
And that's the thing. A lot of the stuff is simple, but we tend to overcomplicate it. There's a great story. I don't know if you come across it, but it's one that I share a lot, where the writer Ernest Hemingway was once challenged to write a six-word story. They wanted to show that with constraints, you can actually say more with less. And what he did is when an audience came together, he took out his piece of paper and he read out the six words, The challenge was whether he could emotionally move an audience with just 6 words. And those
Hmm.
6 words were for sale, baby shoes, never worn. And he
Hmm.
moved the audience with his simplicity of communication.
Hmm.
For sale, baby shoes never worn. Hmm. It paints quite a picture,
Mm.
really big picture. I think something you said, those four elements of energy, spiritual, physical, what were the other two?
Mental and emotional.
Mental and emotional. And I liked where you went with the spiritual, where you talked about doing things that are not deeply in alignment with
Mm.
yourself. Would you say alignment with your values, alignment with your passions, alignment with your calling, alignment? How do people find alignment on what are the things that really bring them to life in this category?
Sure. I think what you said there, Jarek, is exactly what I'm pointing to. It's alignment with your values, who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in, and what comes natural to you. Because when
Hmm.
you do work that is natural for you, it doesn't feel like you're working. I often get asked, Simon, how does it feel speaking on stages around the world? For me, I love it. I enjoy it because that's where I get my energy from. But when we do things that go against who we are, i.e., we're not running our race, but we're living up to someone else's definition, what happens is we have that feeling of tension inside of us. And you may have felt it at some point in your life. You're doing work, but you're having that feeling of tension inside of your stomach because it's just not who you are. And that's where we can reflect on whether what we're doing is true to ourselves or is against who we are.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. And what are some of the emotions people feel when they're out of alignment? Because sometimes people say, I've had someone say, I don't know if I'm out of alignment. Like some days it's great, but other days it's not. And then I had a friend of mine who actually talked about specifically for a woman or a female, um, as their cycle happens every month, their energy levels drastically change depending on what part of the cycle they're in. One
Mm.
week they have all the energy in the world and they feel like they can do everything. And
Hmm.
then literally a day and a half later, I mean, there's a joke phrase, but it's like, I'm a potato. Like you don't feel like doing anything. Like you have no energy or drive. You want to do nothing on that day is what it feels like. And I would, say I don't think that is a feeling of misalignment in their
Mm.
values or their core. That's kind of an internal cycle and energy shift
Mm.
where how do they know when it's really that internal piece of alignment or misalignment? Like I said, what are some of the feelings they might feel that are like, oh, that's how I know I'm really in my flow, in my zone? Versus, ooh, when I feel kind of these emotions, that's probably not where I want to be long term.
Well, first of all, I think what you're speaking to here, Jurek, is there needs to be a balance between two things. The first is listening to your body. You mentioned the cycles that women go through each month. Now, we all have different energetic rhythms. Some of us will be night owls, some of us will be early risers, some of us work at different points of the day better. Now, our body is always speaking to us. And when we listen to it, we start to understand when we need more rest, when we have the energy to do more. And that creates a better understanding between us and our body. Secondly, the best way to understand those feelings and what is important for us is to develop our self awareness. One of the things I often say is that you cannot have self development without self awareness because understanding yourself is the beginning of true wisdom. And very few of us actually take the time to pause, to step back, and do that inner work.
Hmm. Where do we start
I
with
had
this? Oh, go ahead,
I
Jared.
had someone tell me one time being alone with oneself. I mean, solitary confinement is one of the worst punishments they do to human beings. And the key with that is being alone with oneself is the scariest place to be for most humans. And I
And
went,
that is what
wow.
reminds me. It reminds me, Direct, of another saying. I don't know who originally said it, but the saying goes that the longest journey we humans make are the inches from our heads to our hearts. And that is exactly why, because it is challenging to be lonely. But when we start to make that journey, and it's never an easy journey by any means, but it is the most important and exciting that you will ever embark on. And once you make that journey, that's when you begin opening up insight into who you are at a deeper level. And we don't wake up one morning knowing what we're meant to do for the rest of our life. It would be amazing if that was the case, but it only exists in Hollywood films. In reality, what happens is we get clues, we get whispers, we get hints, and then it is about following our curiosity. What am I most curious about right now? And that will lead us to what our purpose is.
Have you noticed that that changes at different stages of life? I remember I was talking to a very, very successful entrepreneur, and she was telling me that specifically around the pandemic that happened and the lockdowns, she said, pre pandemic, I judged my success by how many stages I spoke on, how many planes I was
Mm,
on, and how many people I was able to reach. And she said, after what's just happened, I don't know what changed inside of me, but I now judge myself on how many planes I don't have to get on, how often I get to take a walk with the ones I love on the beach, and how much time I
Mm.
get to read and journal and capture the deepest feelings of me. I went, wow, what an evolution that just happened in this human's nervous
wow.
system and values. And obviously, it was some possible stage of life shift. But have you seen that where as people evolve, the process of which they see as their version of success changes? Have you seen that through this process of working on that energy, physical, spiritual, or the
Mhm.
other ones?
Absolutely. And first of all, Joe, I love that story because I think that speaks to so many people. During the pandemic when we could not go outside, the only place that we could go was inwards. And that
Mm.
is why so many of us had this rare opportunity to spend time reflecting. Post pandemic, we've had these terms such as the great resignation or quiet quitting. And I think the result is because people started to realize what was most important.
Yeah.
And I think challenges and tough times do that to us. They remind us.
We lost Simon temporarily.
Oh, no.
Well, I have a question for you, Jarek, as he's talking. He'll jump back in. Um, my question is about why do you think we forget that energy matters so much? We get. I feel like we totally forget that like how we treat ourselves is really going to determine how we live, right?
Totally. I use the analogy of vehicles. I think our body is the vehicle in which our soul transmutes through the world with. So if this is our vehicle, then I always look at the concept of pit stops.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at an F1 race car, it would be silly to say the way I'm going to win the race is by never pulling into the pit and switching out my tires and filling up my tank of engine or gas and all this stuff. And then I look at like a Chrysler minivan, and they only need a pit stop or an oil change about once a year, but they're only going so fast through life.
True.
Most of us are trying to go as fast as an F1 race car through life, but we're trying to take a pit stop either never or once a year. And if you look at an old pit stop, people say, I don't have time for a pit stop. But if you look at an old like 1950s race car pit stop, it took like 3 minutes to switch out two tires, which you could take a nap and wake up and they're still switching the tire. Versus nowadays, 2013, 2023, it takes like 12 seconds to switch out all four tires, refill the tank, and get the car back on the track. But the biggest thing I noticed was back in the day, 1950s, only three or four people were allowed on the track to help. Nowadays, I've counted upwards of 21 to 22 humans around the car to make it happen quickly. And so the question I always have with
Mm-hmm.
people is, who do you need on your pit crew, and how often do you need to check in? Who is your friend that listens to you? Who is your friend that makes you laugh? Who is your friend that makes you feel understood? Who's your community member that really helps fill your soul so you feel alive? How many people do you need around you that's your pit crew that when you pull in, they instantly help you refuel? And in this case, what Simon's saying, possibly refill your energy levels, spiritual, physical, familial, all these places, But who do you need around you? And if you have the right community that you consider your pit crew, when you pull in, my gosh, they help you refuel every ounce of your being. And so I think of that as our body is the vehicle we're moving through life with. Therefore, what kind of pit stops do we need to constantly be refueling our vehicle so that we can really move quickly through life?
Mm,
Simon back.
oh, dude, I love that a lot. And look, I'm actually looking at the book right now, Energize, Make the Most of Every Moment. I just ordered it. I didn't know. It's my first time meeting Simon, and I know you know Simon.
He's cool, isn't he?
Dude, I love Simon. It
Hold on,
really,
I'm gonna check my text to see where he went.
yeah, and send him a link again. But there are a few comments that are coming in that they love the concept of the pit crew. So thanks, Kat. I appreciate that coming in from YouTube, and a few people from New York. The pandemic reminded me of how important it is to have a family. Very, such a great point, Renuka. I love that, and I think the other thing that I think of is like, where do I get the energy from? And dude, this sounds silly as heck. And you know, I play video games, okay? But last night, I mean, yesterday was a pretty tough day mentally, and for me at least. And I was like, you know, I talked to my wife about it, and then kids. I have a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they're like, "Hey, you want to play Fortnite?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's go play." We played for like 30 minutes, but damn, that was so energizing, right? It
Yeah.
was just getting with the kids, putting on the headset, talking to them, and here comes Simon. So let me bring him in. But dude, it's just doing the things that you know energize you. I think keeping track of those things. What are they? Right? What are they? Simon, we've got you back, buddy. I have a question for you. When it comes
Fantastic.
to energy, I'm assuming different things energize different people.
Mm.
Have you found commonalities though in like saying, "Hey, this energizes everybody"? If you have, what are those? I'm just wondering.
Sure. I think when we talk about physical energy, the obvious instance is that eating well, getting sufficient rest, and moving your body always energizes you. To give you an example, you may wake up one morning and you might not feel like exercising, but I guarantee you, after you have exercised, you never regret the workout
That's true.
because the feeling you get at the end, you can't replace that. It's just these endorphins running through your body and you feel good. You're in a peak state. And so, from a physical perspective, those things always energize us. Now, when we look at the other areas, disconnecting, taking time out always energizes us as well. I mean, just think about the
Mm,
last holiday that you took. When you took a break away from work, you came back feeling rejuvenated, recharged, and reset. Those things always work. The question is, how do we take experiences like disconnecting when we're on holiday so that they're not once in a while, but they're part of our routine? So we regularly have periods where we can create that rhythm between moving forward, but also pausing to collect our thoughts and to connect ourselves to our inner wisdom.
that's very well said, man. Thank you for that. Because we were just talking about kind of downtime, what that down
Mm,
looks like for us, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. Food and movement definitely key. That's why, you know, success health is around too.
Yeah.
And
mm,
by the way, we need to talk to you about that after as well. It'd be great.
Be a great place for you to come hang out with us.
Really.
I know for my wife, one thing that completely energizes her is spending time around people that she really loves.
mm,
And
mm,
I noticed that. But exercise is it for me. Like if I don't work out, I am not the best version of myself. I could be a better human just by working out. Where with her, I know when she's around other humans she loves, it completely fills her tank. And
mm,
it's interesting. I know I have another friend who she requires alone time. Like just need to be alone for a little bit, which I know as parents can be challenging, just
mm.
because your
I
little
feel you.
one's
I guess
always
other
bugging you.
parents I feel you.
I think one of my favorite little Instagram clips is the one with like the mom. She's locked the door of the pantry. She's sitting on the floor, like chewing a piece of licorice. And she looks down to her right and turns the camera, and you see a little hand trying to come under the door. And I was like, man, for people who need alone time, that's an experience to have little humans who need you and require you at these stages of life. And then I had another friend. It was interesting on what refuels them. So I needed exercise. My wife needed people. This friend needed alone time, and then someone else I know. The thing that really did it for them was nothing time. And it
Mm,
doesn't matter if they were with people or not. It was just some space of time where there were no requirements. There was nothing that had to happen. The way she described it is some days I wake up and I call it a nothing day. And a nothing day is I wake up, I close my eyes, I take a deep breath, and if it feels right, I do it.
mm.
And I was like,
We,
whoa, that's got to be an adventure. Like, where
we,
is that taking you? And she described some of the coolest descriptions of just a single day in the life. And I was like, wow. Wow, I mean, it sounds like that movie, The Yes Man, where like for a year he
mm,
just says yes to everything.
Mm.
Like that was her life on those days. Like she wakes up and she just closes her eyes, kind of listens to her intuition, takes a deep breath, and if it feels right, she goes sure and just goes and tries it. And I was like, dang, what
Mm.
a different way to refuel.
we all need, it sounds like we all need a nothing day. And it's something that I embrace at least once a week because I've very quickly come to realize that, when we think about nothing days, what comes to my mind is a bit of silence. And what I've
Mm.
learned is that silence is far from empty, it is full of answers. And when you said the word nothing day reminded me of the story of Thomas Edison. Now,
Mm.
Thomas Edison used to go fishing every day during the height of his career. And the interesting thing was that even though he fished for the years that he did, he never caught a single fish. And when he was asked, how can you be such a bad fisherman that you've done it for all these years and you've not caught a single fish?
That's
He
funny.
said, the reason is because I use no bait. So no one, not even the fish, would disturb me. And he credited those silent moments
Mm,
of where he had those sparks of insight and those creative breakthroughs. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from simply just having a nothing day.
mm. I
Dude,
like that.
there's an Italian term, and I'm trying to remember it. I think it's dulce far niente. It means the sweetness of doing nothing, and
Mm.
it's a famous Italian term. And you can ask a lot of the older Italian folks, grandmas, grandpas, and they'll be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. What are you doing? Ah, it's not dulce far niente. It's like nothing. I'm just doing. And I love that. This is like the whole thing we're talking about, doing nothing. It's beautiful. And so it just reminded me of that, man. By the way, I showcased your book. I told everybody to go buy it. It's called Energize. Came out in August and it's already a bestseller. I ordered it. Like I said, I'm meeting you for the first time. I just ordered it. And I was like, oh, dude, how did I not know about this book? And,
Well, what happened to me when I'm next in the US? I'm going to be speaking in San Diego in April, actually.
oh, what event? What event is that for?
It is organized by Work Human. I believe it's a week conference, and there's some great speakers there. So I'm going to be doing a keynote and a workshop there.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Dude, you know what? Jarek, we should see if we can get Simon back for our first virtual event.
That'd be cool.
That'd be awesome. So we can
I
help
like
help more people get their hands on Energize, man. So I like that. I like that. All right, Jarek. Anything in closing here, my friend?
I think the biggest piece, and I always love if someone's listened this long and they're at this point of the interview, I always love to give them like, what can they go do right now? I know they
Mm,
can create more space. I know they can find ways to align with their values. I know they can do the things that bring more joy to their life and follow their intuition. But what's something that they could do today that would really kind of build the momentum in the right direction?
mm. I would leave the viewers with two things. One is a reflection, one is a question, because often reflection and questions can be the catalyst for action.
Yeah.
So the first reflection is something that came to me or I was reminded about when I became a father for the first time.
Mm.
So this was in April 2020, just as the United Kingdom went into its first lockdown. And it was 4 days after we went into our first lockdown. I was at the hospital, and because everything was uncertain, I, as the partner to my wife, was only allowed in the recovery ward for 60 minutes before we had to leave. Now, in the moment I held my daughter in my arms for the first time, I was reminded of something very powerful, which is you and I are a miracle. The fact that we were born is a miracle event in itself. Many of us wish we would win the national or the regional lottery. Yet we have already won the greatest lottery ticket there is going, the lottery of life. The question is, what are you going to do with that winning ticket?
Mm.
And as an extension of that reflection, the question, and also within this question, a challenge for you is how much longer will you continue doing what you're comfortable doing and avoid what you are capable of doing?
Mm.
Just imagine if you take just one step forward today in exploring the world outside the edges of your map. One step a day compounds into 365 steps in a year. Imagine for a moment where and who you could be.
Mm.
Dude, that sounds like the ending to a keynote, man. I love that. I'm like, I'm trying to keep up with you, trying to write that down. I was like, that's so good. I love that. I'm just gonna have that on replay, man. Simon, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate your time. And Jarek, thanks for piecing this together, bro. That's pretty awesome.
Of course. Thank you, Simon. Thank you all for paying attention and tuning in and hanging out with us. We appreciate you.